approaches to realism. We could probably say that there are some styles that get used, particularly in the dance world. I was, interested in like looking and saying, what types of realism do I see when I look at realism in the dance world, that the way people have approached it. But we'll also look at these in other places. Now, in some ways, some forms, like we've talked about theater being a far more second function form than the dance form. And so theater tends to have much more realism. And they'll even use some of these styles. We're going to talk about naturalism a bit, because particularly in the world of theater, sometimes we can have naturalism that occurs. But I'd like to look at some styles in the dance. And naturalism is one of them, when we try to get as close to possible of representing in real life. Now, when I showed you that this image of with my realism, I said I could even get further with my realism, and could I make this drawing look exactly like a photograph with the pen and ink? And I could, if I spent enough time and put enough detail into the realism to make it look naturalistic. Yeah. Now, sometimes in the world of theater, we have theatrical realism, which brings in this type of naturalism. And here are some set designs, and I like to show them because you can see that on the stage, they've built these actual houses that have four walls, that have actual doors, and that are very realistic. There is a kind of naturalism here. We can even say, if we had a kitchen, we might think about, oh, if it's so naturalistic, there's even salt and pepper in the salt and pepper shaker, that we want to get as close as possible to real life. Sometimes that happens in dance, but typically in dance, we never move this close to realism and naturalism. But sometimes will do that in the movement, when we want movement to seem naturalistic and less stylized. Yeah. One time I did a dance and I said, I want no dance steps in this. So I didn't want arabesques or things that look like actual steps. I just wanted it to be a series of bending over, standing up, partnering lifts, but everything had a kind of naturalism to it. So sometimes even in the dance world, we will deal with this kind of naturalism that will occur. Here are some images that are of the Nutcracker. Now, the Nutcracker is a phenomenon that happens at Christmas time in the dance world. And so many companies will do the Nutcracker because people want to come and see it. These are some images from the Nevada Ballet's Nutcracker, where they wanted to set it in a Victorian house and have it look like a dollhouse. Now, that in and of itself is another kind of realism, that by picking Victorian and picking dollhouse, these are things. So it's kind of fantastic because you can see that the portions of this dollhouse open, and you can see the characters inside the house as the Nutcracker unfolds. And those of you that know the Nutcracker know that the first act happens in the house, and then the second act is in this more magical world with all of these divertissements, where we have all these various dances as they travel around the universe, I suppose, and look at these dances occur. Okay, another category I want to delve into a bit is kitsch. Kitsch is a word that gets used, I encounter it more in the visual art world than I do sometimes in the dance or the theatrical world. But kitsch is a great phenomenon that we can look at it. When do things become kitschy? We can also lump with this comedy, camp, and especially when we get into this world of comedy, we can get into this world of clowning and things that become broad. Yeah, broad is a theatrical term when something gets bigger than life. So sometimes if you think about the comedies you watch on TV, sometimes the comedic world can get bigger than a naturalistic world. Yeah, sometimes people don't like, if you don't like comedy and you like drama more, sometimes you like things more subtle. You don't like things as full-blown and broad and big. But one of the categories is kitsch. Now, kitsch was describing an art object that was considered to be in poor taste because it displayed excessive garishness, cuteness, or sentimentality. Okay, now what's fascinating to me about kitsch is originally kitsch was used as a negative term. When we described an object as kitsch, we almost thought of it like, oh, it's not as elevated or as good as some of the other objects that we are more interested in the art world. Yeah. So things like originally Hallmark cards, kittens, cute kittens primarily, lava lamps, Hummel figures. These were examples. Here's a great little image of this cat. And this has been a poster probably from the 70s where this little kitten is hanging here, and usually it's accompanied by the words "hang in there, baby," because it's something where we can identify. Things will get better. Just hang in there. But again, it's a really cute image. And originally, as a work of photography, we might not think, this is not a high-end work of art. It's perhaps just kind of a graphic design. Or sometimes we would use the word naively realistic to mean that it's naive. It's not as elevated as some of what we want or what we're interested in. Yeah. Here are some other images. These sometimes garden gnomes. Or even these flowers here are kind of naively realistic or easy. Sometimes people have criticized Hello Kitty for that, or even these smiley faces. Although nowadays, I think we have different approaches because of the emoji keyboards. All of these things we're now much more used to, and we're even finding artists have actually challenged it and shaken the world up by using things that are kitsch and elevating them and making them high art. Yeah. Gordon Byrne, who was a contemporary aesthetician, said, most things that are kitsch are described as too easy, too formulaic, and he even said they can be a lie. They can pretend that they're a version of the world that doesn't quite exist. Here is a Hummel figure, and we can put it next to this kind of great pink clock. And again, you can see that these were considered to be less fancy, less great items, but they're now quite collectible that we get. Now, from time to time, you have various artists. Here's one. This is Matthew Barney. He's a kind of sculptor. He's a filmmaker. He works in mixed media. He's a performance artist. So he created a series of films called the Cremaster series. This is number 3, called The Order. And you can see that a lot of his imagery is very kitsch. Here on this image, you have this feather hat, which is really reminiscent of a Scottish hat there. And but he kind of pushes the image and takes us to a different place with, the bloody cloth that's shoved in his mouth here. So this woman here with the cat legs, so this is an actress he works with in some of his films, and she is a double amputee, and these are fabricated legs that she can walk around as a cat on these prosthetic limbs. So again, pushing the boundaries. In Las Vegas, we can even see kitsch kinds of images here in Cirque du Soleil, where we've pushed what a clown is to this perhaps European and also this kitschy postmodern interpretation of what it is to be a clown. And sometimes camp is another kind of word that gets related to kitsch. And here, this is Jeremy Scott, and you can see these images are quite kitschy, quite campy, and we get fashion shows that look like this. So what I love about his work is that sometimes we have images here that that look like cartoons, that look like perhaps what we wouldn't expect in the world of high fashion. But instead, he takes us to this other world, which is his world of really pushing the boundaries. You can see it's whimsical, and you can see it's quite fun. Yeah. You can see in this image here, this is Miley Cyrus. She's worn quite a bit of Jeremy Scott. And it probably makes sense because he's a great fashion designer to wear if you really want to make a statement and you want to kind of say, I don't care about fitting in, and I'm really pushing the boundaries of the work too. I've got this great, this is a tracksuit that Jeremy Scott made for Adidas. And you can see that he's taken the typical stripes and he's kept them on the pants and he's kept them on the jacket on the side. But again, it's whimsical, it's campy, it is also whimsical, campy, and it's also kitsch in a way because of this. Now, when we look at a tracksuit like this, and I'll put the jacket on here. So when we look at a tracksuit, like, what does it mean? Here, this is just a tape measure. So we can see the kind of tape measure on this and the pants. If I wear this tracksuit out, I get noticed. And most of the time with a Jeremy Scott fashion design, you're going to be noticed in it. Okay, I've used the word camp a couple times. I should probably describe it with a definition. Sometimes when camp is used as an adjective, we can say that something is campy when it's deliberately exaggerated, when it's theatrical in its style, and it's typically sometimes for humorous events. So something is camp, or campy. Yeah, sometimes people can camp it up also if they really exaggerate the humor of something. Now, we can see things that are campy in the dance world, and sometimes there are different dances like Mark Morris's Hard Nut, which is a takeoff on the Nutcracker. And in this version, he kind of pokes fun at it and he makes it broader. Some people might say that Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake is also a kind of way of deconstructing or camping up the traditional Swan Lake. So we see camp all the time. The final one type of realism I want to look at in this lecture is sexual realism. Yeah. And it's not exclusive in and of itself, but there are times when artists will bring sexuality into the world of art. Particularly, that can happen in the dance world as well. And when we bring sexuality, it brings up a lot of issues and different ways that we look at an artwork. So in this next lecture, let's look at, this is a lecture I did for another course, but we're going to show it here, and it's dance and sexuality.